Welcome to KSoK Uncensored. Today we are focusing on Drew from Pennsylvania. So before we jump into all things Drew, I want to talk about something that happened to me personally just the other day. You may have seen my rant on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, but I'm going to tell it to you here live. So basically, I walked with my husband to go pick up my kids from school. I never do it. I'm always working, so I got away from the computer, yada, yada. We go to pick them up, and my husband said, if you don't wear a mask, I won't. I said, you know I'm not going to be wearing a mask. And he said, all the parents wear masks, even though it's an outdoor pickup. He's like, let's not do it. I'm like, I was never planning on it. But anyway, so he didn't wear his mask. He's right. Every single person there except us were all masked up to pick up their kids outdoors. So here's what I'm going to say. I might not have had the nicest remark back to this woman that insulted us, but I'm used to virtual insults, not in person. It's a whole new level. So a woman with another woman, so two larger women walking by us said, oh, apparently you don't do masks. And I thought about it for a second. I did whip around because, mind you, we were walking past each other. And I mulled it over for 0.5 seconds. And then I said, apparently you don't do broccoli. And my husband elbowed me and said that wasn't nice, which he's right. That wasn't nice. But that was my first in-person insult in quite some time. And that's what came out. But the fact of the matter is, here's what happened next. So I post my experience. Was I proud of myself? Slightly, yes. Wasn't the nicest thing to say, but I'm happy that I didn't just stay quiet and keep walking. That's what they want you to do. So what I did is I posted my experience on my social media platform. And when I did that, I received so many, I would say the majority of people were like, good for you. We have to stand up for ourselves. But I'll tell you what, a lot of my female followers were basically shaming me for saying something about weight. Like I've already said, not the optimal response. But the thing is, I got remarks like, you need to take the high road. Don't be, excuse me, don't be like them. Now you're just as good as them. And that's where we need to stop. To me, women and men, I didn't receive any of those from men, I will be honest. Women, especially conservative women, knock it off. You need to stop being part of the problem. It is time that we fight back, and no, it doesn't need to be insults about somebody's weight, but we need to stop just standing around and allowing things to happen to us, to allow our beliefs to be attacked, our morals, everything we stand for is under attack right now. And so I'm not going to take the high road at this point in time. That road has been taken for decades. And where has it gotten us? It's made us weak. We are weak as a party. And the party that goes low, they have all the power right now. So in my opinion, I feel that we need more people, more conservatives that would generally be quiet and just kind of walk away. We need more reactions. You know, going back, if I actually had a little more time to think about it, I would have said something along the lines of, "Oh, please mind your own business," or, you know, something like that. Or I would have asked her, why do you feel the need to make a comment like that? But my inner country girl came out, and I went with what I went with. But I truly feel that the people that were giving me flack in my social media comments are the people that are making us weak as a party. And, you know, that ship, the ship has sailed, the ship that is full of not being like them, not hitting the streets, not peaceful protesting. We need to be out there, you guys. Enough is enough of the niceties. That ship has sailed. So I hope that this resonates with some of you, because it's just something where I am a nice person who does not like to have to put my armor on every morning, but I have to living here, unfortunately. And it is every time I have to go to the grocery store and put a mask on, I feel like I've been kicked. And so it's one of those things where it's tiresome to not only be putting your armor on, but then not fighting back in a sense. And so I'm not going to just stand idle while I continue and we continue to be attacked. So it is what it is, but it was a pretty interesting experience. And it is funny that my police officer husband told me I wasn't being very nice. I told his mom about it and she's like, oh, that's so funny. You guys are like the reverse. Usually it's the husband saying something and the wife's embarrassed. But no, I'm definitely the crazier one of the two. But that's my story. I hope it resonates with some of you. The niceties are done in my book. But what I'd like to do, let's bring on Drew. We have Drew here, and he is a former law enforcement officer in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. Hey, Drew.
How you doing? Great to have
Good.
you.
How are you?
Great to see you.
You as well. You know, it's so cool to have you on, Drew, is because you've been an active subscriber and you watch my lives, and I appreciate it so much. And I always see your little name pop up with the comments. And I'm so
All the
happy
time.
that you're on here. And I just appreciate you so much.
Yes, I appreciate everything that you have done to promote everything that you're doing, and it's just it's a wonderful thing to have a voice that actually can be heard. With today, it's
Absolutely.
just so hard anymore.
It so is. I before we get into the meat and potatoes, what I want to do is say Drew has won me over for life, and here's why. And I don't forget people that do things like this. So last weekend, my Chihuahua ate some of that urethral, or I'm probably saying that wrong, but that fake sugar, and that's incredibly toxic for pets. This ties into the COVID restrictions that are here in Oregon. So basically, I needed to take my dog to the emergency vet to get her stomach pumped because I wasn't aware of the in-home remedies such as, what was it, hydrogen peroxide. So I go to bring her to an emergency vet. I call the first one that I've taken them to for years, and they said, we're at COVID capacity. We're not accepting any animal emergencies at all. She's like, I have a line of 20 people on the phone waiting to ask me questions that are emergencies. So that tells you how crazy these COVID restrictions are. I call two more neighboring emergency vets, same thing. Oh, we're at COVID capacity. And they directed me to this SH Hole, downtown Portland, which is amongst where all the homeless are. They said that I could either go there or I needed to go across the river to Vancouver, Washington. I mean, it's so asinine. So I literally said to the last lady, I said, so you're allowing people's pets to die because you're complying with COVID restrictions. She said, sorry. So anyways, where this ties you in, Drew, is that I posted my frustration on YouTube. And Drew, you're so amazing. Like I see comments from you saying that you were able to get in contact with one of your friends who's a vet, and they were there live, able to give me pointers on what to do for my dog. I was able to get your phone number and we talked, and I ended up doing what your vet told you to tell me to do. I rubbed sugar on her gums, etc., and she's fine. And
That's amazing.
how the kindness that you showed me, that I will never forget. And so I just want you to know that, and I'm very, very appreciative.
Thank you. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's the least to any family, as far as I'm concerned. So, your husband and myself, we stick together, and that's just always how it goes. But when I
Right.
saw us, I have a special care for animals, obviously too. Maybe sometimes more than humans, but no, I'm kidding. But it's
No,
in
you're
reality,
totally serious.
it's the way it works is, I mean, like you were saying before, they're helpless. I mean, they need somebody to
Right.
advocate for them, and we have to stand up and be able to support that. But when I knew I could help, I've always been that type of person ever since I was little. If I knew I can help, I will, and that's kind of what geared me into becoming a police officer. you know
I
but
think that's
yeah, I
awesome.
mean, I networked. I have many friends from all different hats of life, and if I can help anybody, I'm always willing to offer a helping hand. So I'm glad
That
it
is so
worked out.
cool. Well, I'm so glad that we're virtual friends now that actually have each other's phone numbers because it was funny. My husband was sleeping because he had worked the night before when all this was going down, and he came home and I tell him about it, and then I told him how you helped me, and then he was like, "Were you really going to pay the money to bring her to the emergency vet?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to knock you out, buddy." So, yeah,
Money's
I'm
not
like
an
so
option when it comes to it, but
he's
you're right.
concerned about the emergency vet fee. I was like, mm-mm. So, anyways, and I'm feisty, but yeah. So, I mean, thankfully she's fine, and thanks to you.
Right.
But good lord,
I mean, she
crazy.
looks like an amazing little pup too. It's Chihuahua, right?
Yeah.
She's a
Yeah.
Chihuahua, yeah. Yeah, they're
You
not
know,
cheap
when I
dogs.
lived,
I mean,
so you live in Manhattan right now, and I lived in
yes,
Queens, and the apartment, you look like you're in a luxury high rise there. But I had a tiny little apartment in Astoria, Queens, and we had, I mean, we could only get a Chihuahua. I wanted a dog, and that's the only dog that would really fit.
yeah,
So
right.
they're
Yeah, they
good
do
sister.
have a weight capacity. I think it's like 30 pounds or something less that
Yeah.
you're allowed to have. So kind of limit
Yep.
your options.
Totally. Absolutely. So I know you're in Manhattan now, but you born and raised in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area,
Yes, yes.
and law enforcement in the Philadelphia area for almost 20 years.
Yes, and just to go back, I didn't want to confuse anybody. I think there was a misconception on Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia, but it's fine. It was you're
Oh,
right.
that's my fault.
It's okay.
I'm
Everybody
sorry.
understands. It's fine. It was yes. It's Philadelphia area, so it's
Why
a
do
big
I
difference
always do that?
between.
That's not the first time I've done that. Oh my gosh.
So
I
it's only a
probably
6 hour
should
difference.
have.
I could have made it every day,
Oh my gosh.
but
Sorry.
yes, definitely, yeah. No, I didn't want to correct you, but it was or interrupt you, but just so everybody understands, it was Philadelphia area.
Philadelphia area. Thank you. I'll have to remind myself cream cheese. Visual aids. All right. Talk to us about it. Let's hear though. I want to hear your experience.
I mean, from the beginning, it was
Yes.
exactly that an experience. I graduated the academy year 2000, just prior to 9/11, and it was a lot to absorb it all at once. And I was actually assigned to a rather interesting section. Our unit was specifically designed to patrol and maintain the housing complex. So we did Section 8 public housing area. Um, for lack of better words, we were in the middle of where everything began. So it was a learning experience at its best. Definitely some place you want to start if you're going to look into becoming a police officer in a city. There is a difference between city police officers and local municipality police officers out there. Just not based off of what we can and can't do, but about the experience that we absorb in such a short amount of time versus, if you work in a local suburb or something like that, you may not see shooting or homicide as frequently as we did. But it was rated by per capita one of the worst cities on the East Coast. So I'm not sure exactly where they stand today, but I'm sure they're somewhere up there in the 10 range of worst cities. So it was an interesting place.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. Okay, so when you and I spoke, you told me about like you were 2 weeks on the job and you had a wild incident
Wild
happen to you. I
experience.
was hoping to tell the viewers about that.
Honestly, for most, this would have been like the, okay, what, this isn't for me type of,
Right.
experience. But I was, I was assigned to last out, which is commonly known in law enforcement as the midnight shift, or where you're the first shift of the actual physical day. Um, so I'm on patrol. It was probably around 2 a.m. around that time, and I have a vehicle pulled up to me in an intersection. This is my second week on the street, mind you. So I'm just happy to help anybody, and I just want to, to be there for everybody. And the guy comes up to me, puts his window down a little bit, just as much, and he reaches over, and I'm thinking the guy's asking for directions, at best, because there was a casino being built in the area. But it was just one of those things where, I said, hey, I said, what can I do to help you? and he puts his window down and he reaches over his passenger seat with a loaded 45 and blasts off with 6 rounds.
Oh my
Six
gosh.
rounds of gunshot that I did not expect, and
Oh my gosh.
it. I was literally not even concerned about whether or not if it hit me at that point. I was it it hit across the window, it hit my light bar on the roof of the police car. I mean everything. I mean except me, and
Wow.
uh, he takes off, shuts his headlights off, and goes flying down the highway. And I catch up to him, and I notice that he starts to lose a little bit of control on his turn, and I was able to push him into a telephone pole. Um, Unfortunately, that was the only way to actually stop this guy from continuing on. My biggest concern wasn't at that point. Still, it wasn't me. If I was leaking, I didn't know yet. But
Yeah.
for what it was worth, I was just concerned about getting him off the street. And that's the mindset. It was the training that we went through. It wasn't about anger or frustration about what he had just done. And
Right.
I think it's a lot of misconception about like where people confuse like the cops are after them because they're angry and they want to come after them. All right,
Right.
my focus was just simply getting this guy off the street. I didn't want him to hurt anybody, and
Absolutely.
he fortunately came to a misdirection and he slid into a pole, and unfortunately he's a paraplegic now for life.
Oh wow.
But that was as a result of the accident. Nothing of our doing, but he was questioned by the detectives, and they told, or he told the detectives, I should say, that it was gang initiation. You have to shoot at a cop. So that was, and
You
he
know,
was only 17
in the
years old.
movies, you hear that in the movies, but that's legitimately gang initiation is to shoot a cop.
Well, per se,
Wow.
shoot at a cop was his,
Yeah.
didn't say whether or not. So, I
Wow.
mean, I think I might have been on the lucky spectrum where you didn't have
Yes.
to actually shoot
Okay.
a cop, but,
Oh my gosh.
it was,
You had guardian angels all around you. I mean, seriously,
I,
to have
I do.
six shots fired at you and not a single one land. I mean, oh my gosh. That's insane. And it's unfortunate that he's a paraplegic now, but you know what? Actions have consequences, and unfortunately, that's where he's at. And possibly, I wonder where he's at today, but you never know. Maybe he didn't end up joining the gang, and maybe he's done something with himself. I don't know.
I can
Maybe
only
not.
hope.
I see gangsters in
We,
wheelchairs downtown Portland.
I mean, this is true. Sometimes it's a badge of honor, for some, and it's unfortunate. But ironically, it wasn't anything to do with like a Bloods or a Crips or MS-13. It was just a local, type of gang. It wasn't like
Uh,
somebody that knows everything about like all these different affiliations.
right.
Um, they just organize themselves and they have their own rules, and unfortunately, that
Oh,
was one of them.
that's rough. I just thought of something. This is kind of gross, but my husband, there's a couple of them, but there's known gangsters that are in wheelchairs, like paraplegics from gang shootings. And now they're older, but they're still hanging out with their friends, and they're in wheelchairs now. But one of them was arrested at some point in the last 5 years, and my husband put him in the back of his police car, and the colostomy bag opened up on the seat in the cruiser, and he had to clean it
Never a
up.
good smell. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Fortunately,
He's like, he said that was
fortunately,
like
the
worst.
in the back of our cars, we had we had a regular person vomiting or something that we picked up. So we actually have
Yeah.
plugs in the bottom of our seat canyons where you can actually lift up and
Oh,
just hose out the whole back of the car. You know, it
oh,
was so. Hopefully,
I
they
don't know.
didn't have that kind of mess. But
His is like hard plastic, so they are pretty
right,
easy to
yeah,
wash, but he still had to do more than he wanted to. But I was like dry heaving when he told me about that. I'm like, oh no. But
still smell
yeah,
that you don't want.
no, you don't. Well, okay, so that's wild. I mean, thank God you're okay, and it's just incredible. People have no idea what law enforcement deals with. I'd love for you to tell. I know you talked about just when we were talking about how you were helping me out with my animal and how you really have a heart to help people, like that's on your heart. And I loved when you were telling me about how you interacted with the community while you're in law enforcement. And do you mind
Yes.
telling us a little bit about, especially, I liked that you played, basketball and that type of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean it was great. I mean, like I had a wide range of children that we were always around, and you know, um, unfortunately, when you grow up in certain lifestyles and communities, you don't get certain experiences to deal with anything outside of where you live. I mean, it was a shame that some didn't even see a mall or a movie theater. Since they were alive, and some of them were 12 and 15 years old, just the experience of leaving the neighborhood. But I always believed in interacting with the community. It's always best to be on speaking terms with anybody, but especially the community that you patrol. On my lunch break, I would get out of the car and go on the basketball court and say, hey, can I play? And they were just kind of like shocked at first, like, well, you want to play with us? And they're 12, 15 years old, nothing. I mean, they're still taller than me. I'm 5'11", but it's just one of those things where they, absorbed the fact that I wanted to play, and that was great. And they welcomed me. And, I was always known in the community as somebody that was willing to listen to somebody if they had a question or problem or didn't understand. I would take the extra time to explain to them why it is what it is. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why I've always believed that law should be taught in school itself, educational wise, as part of a curriculum, just so there's a better understanding with the public and community about
Right.
why things happen. you know but for what it was worth, we had a great relationship. I got along with pretty much everybody there. You always have a handful of people that just don't like you because of who you are, and that's
Right.
just something we deal with in life. I look
Yeah.
past that. I grew up in the neighborhood that was, multicultural, and I never knew what racism was, to be honest with you. I mean, I was always told this is what it is, but I was like, why? You're either a normal person and we're cool, or you're a jerk and we don't want anything to do with you. But it had nothing to do with your color of your
Right.
skin, and
Right.
it's just I don't understand why people think that that's a problem today. I mean, racism obviously exists anywhere, no matter what country you go to. But I still honestly believe that the United States is probably the least racist country in the world, and as far as perspective is concerned. But um, we were fine before this new administration, and it just seems like that they wanted to separate us for their own reasons. But as
Right.
long as we can
Exactly.
look past that, and see that it's not about that. But I mean, in the
They knew
community,
exactly what they were doing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. They knew exactly what they were doing with the race baiting. I mean, it's just like you said, it's all over the world. I'm so sick of people saying, "Oh, America is so racist." It's crazy. I'm like, you can go to Japan. That's one of the countries I want to visit. You go there, and just because you have light colored hair, everyone wants a picture with you, and that's not offensive. That's like it's because you're unique and you're different, like in their territory, right? So it's like it's
Great.
one of those things where people get so frustrated. I watch all of these, YouTube videos and just things on Instagram, and it's like, it's usually people saying, "Yeah, my hair is a different texture. That doesn't mean you can touch it, or don't compliment it. Why are you complimenting hair?" It's just like it's so hypersensitive, and it really, for me, it's like, why can't we embrace and celebrate our differences versus be told we're not even allowed to act as if they exist? Like that's creating so much division. And the same thing with law enforcement. I mean, you're talking about like your experiences is you're a human interacting with other humans. And but yet law enforcement is just all grouped together. They're all rotten. Even, when the truth of the matter is it's like maybe 3% is a not great law enforcement officer. So you're spot on. I don't believe that racism was ever a real
True.
problem, at least in the last 2 decades. Um,
Right.
they've manufactured it.
I mean, you're going to have that 3% in any category of profession. There's always going to be that group that, you know, just you cannot, no matter what you do, get along with them. I mean, I had it in my department with guys that I worked with that are supposed to be, you know, my backup and brothers that were like,
Right.
eh, you know, you're just here and, you know, you do your thing and we'll do ours. And I just, it happens because people have their own personal problems and they
Right.
try to, you know, share that off to you. And it's not how it works. You know,
Right.
I mean, I do believe in, you know, one main thing in life, you know, by protecting and serving only one race, you know, and that's the human race, you know.
I completely agree. Drew, you have a visitor. Hold on a sec. I've got to grab.
Visitor.
She just busted into the office here, and I have the
That's
doors
amazing.
shut. How to get in. And so I was like, oh, how
Look at her.
perfect. We were talking about her. So she's alive and well. She's my little grandma chihuahua. She's 14. So she's got a few years left. But anyways, she wanted to say hi.
Oh, that's amazing.
Sorry.
Thanks for having her. That's great. Perfect timing.
She's left me. Oh my gosh. But anyway, so that's who you helped me save. So thank you.
That's amazing.
Uh, but yeah, so no, your experiences are wild. So what I want to do, I know, so you're in Manhattan now, and I know you're
Yes.
engaged. So that's exciting news. And she's a New Yorker, right?
Yes. 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 Yes.
All right. And you know, I'm married to a New Yorker, so you have to watch out for them.
Yeah.
They're sassy.
She's a hot one. Her family. Actually originally she was originally born in Ecuador. So she's
Oh,
been here about 16 years. So
oh, very
she's
cool. Very cool.
she's a spicy one.
I love it. I love it. I feel like men, especially strong men, they need a very strong woman. I really feel that way. Either they're going to go for someone who's really submissive or they're going to go for someone who can call them on the carpet. And I think that's good. I think strong men such as yourself, I feel like need that really strong woman who's going to say, "Nah, call you on the carpet."
It
So,
does.
good. That's great. That's fantastic. So I hear we've spoken a bit and it sounds like you guys are entertaining moving to a red state.
Yes. And the simple fact behind that is just the way New York looks. You know,
Yeah.
when I first moved here, New York was the place to be. And in that little bit of time, New York simply just fell. They have no leadership anymore. Um, as far as like the residents that are moving out by the droves, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I think I read something that was somewhere along the lines of 250 uh, people per, I believe it was day that were leaving. At one point, I don't know if I'm sure that's slowed down a little, but we were at a capacity at one point of 8.62 million people. And I think we've lost at least 14% of that.
Oh my.
It's ridiculous. But nobody wants to stay here because it's a revolving door with the crime. As your husband can entertain that. I mean, you lock somebody up and 24 hours or less, they're back out in the street doing the same thing. You know,
Right.
the subway systems are terrible as far as safety is concerned. We
Right.
should have, you know, better protection for the people who are, and they're trying. I mean, I will give them that. They do have more officers than they used to down in the subway service systems, but
That's good.
you're just going to, it's hit or miss. And unfortunately, most of the time that's with somebody possibly being pushed in front of a train when they say hit or
Yeah.
miss. Um, it was
People don't
happening
realize
actually
that.
almost
That's not just
right.
in the movies. People get pushed in front of the subways. I mean, and that's not a way to go. That's nasty. That is just, yeah, that's
And
scary.
there's a two factor involved in that. I mean, if you get pushed onto the tracks, you know, the worst case scenario is you got a bump or a bruise. Um, I'm sorry, best case scenario. The worst case scenario is, you know, obviously get hit by a train, but you know
Mm-hmm.
that light at the end of the tunnel you don't want to go towards. But you also have a high electrical line that runs through. It's called the third rail. That if you touch that, that's going to instantly fry you.
Oh,
So
I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Oh
yeah,
my gosh, it's
super
crazy.
super dangerous.
So much. Well, I commuted. So I lived in Astoria, Queens, the Greek district of Queens, and then I worked in the Empire State Building. And so I would commute in via subway every day, and that was, though I felt safe for the most part, there were times that I felt really on edge while on the subway. And I mean, I remember thinking like, you're locked in this car with people that you don't know from Adam. You don't know. A lot of them are experiencing some type of oh gosh, what's the they call them emotionally disturbed people in New York and
EPs. Yeah.
NYPD. EDP. Like what am I allowed to say now? What am I not? But yeah, so the EDPs. I mean, you're in there with them, and it is scary because it's just so unpredictable. I mean, the morning crew is like the same people that you see every morning, so I felt all right. But now, Drew, you mentioned like the revolving door of crime, and I've been back in Oregon for 12 years now. But when I lived there, there were still, I mean, there was still law and order for the most part. I moved out in '09. But now you think about what the DA is, there, would you guys have, is it the bail reform that passed January 2020, I believe. And so you don't have to pay bail. You can just get out on your own recognizance. And so you say, ROR, return on recognizance. You say, yes, I will be there. I will be there for my court date. BS. Nobody's going to be there for their court date. And they let you out and you go commit another crime and it happens all over again. And there are zero repercussions for these people. And so you want to talk about Asian hate crimes. Half the crimes that are happening on the streets in New York City are against Asian people, and it's not white people doing it. So
Exactly.
it's just like, when are we going to hold people accountable? But in New York City, like, how do you feel walking down the street? I know you carry, but how do you feel? Like, do you feel safe? Do you feel on edge?
I don't think that I am very approachable to most people. So I think that kind of works in my favor.
Yeah.
250 pounds, 6 foot almost. So I'm walking down the street with a little more confidence than most. But as far as it's concerned, yes, I still have, that mindset where it sits in your mind that you need to be aware of your surroundings all the time. And most of the time, from behind. You take caution to things that you normally wouldn't have in life before, especially like something simple as standing in line at a store. It just, you really feel like you're put on a sense of awareness that you have never been on before. And, like I said, when I first moved here, New York was well managed. It seemed, the system worked, and, when the police officer locked you up, you were worried about getting locked up. Now it's just
Right.
like, go ahead, lock me up.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Doesn't
it
even
almost,
matter.
almost the way that the protection from abuse orders, work. We would tell our residents, just go and file, this paper that's supposed to protect you. And if he comes back, and kills you, give us a call, and
I know.
unfortunately that we didn't say it in those words, but it was the way that the law had our hands tied. And that was because, of people protesting, demonstrating against their rights, of, freedoms. And
Right.
every time that they do that, they don't realize that it actually makes our job harder to do to protect them when they need our help.
Right.
And what happened was, people will, say, hey, this guy's after me. And then we can't do anything because he's just after you. He
Right.
didn't do anything to you yet. Call us when he does
Right.
something to you. And
I
I
know.
hate it
It's
to be that person, and I mean, working in law enforcement is not for everybody.
no.
Some people wake up one day and they say, hey, you know what? That sounds like a fun career. I'll try that out. And they're usually the ones that don't work out too well.
Right.
Generally, it's something that's in you when you're a child. And
Yeah.
you have to be that, it has to be in your heart to want to be able to help people. And
Right.
there is a difference between good and bad cops because of that, because some put a badge on every day and walk out the door and you think that they should be respected. And that's not how it works. It's respect is earned, definitely.
Absolutely.
It is how you speak to people. It's not how you want to be treated, but it's how you treat others. You
Right.
know,
Yes.
and you don't have to come off on everybody. You know, this is what I'm telling you to do. Do it now, and if you don't listen, these are the consequences. That's not how life works. I mean, it is, but in general, it doesn't have to work that way as an interaction. You know, and
Right.
when you're able to actually speak to somebody, just like you and I are talking, and say, "Hey, listen, you know what? This is why I stopped you because it seems like there was some type of safety issue going on, and I just want to make you aware of it." You know, law enforcement's not about always just locking people up. And I'm glad I
Right.
learned that early because that's what every cop wants to do when they first get out of the academy. They want to go and lock up the world and save the world, because they think that kind of, that's the thing. But it really isn't. It's not about locking up the world. It's about teaching. Being a police officer is most importantly about teaching. And I believe in teaching the law to people and better ways to handle things to be safer is the objective, not going out there and just giving everybody fines and locking them up for anything you can think of.
Right.
That
Exactly.
doesn't change anything. You know,
Right. You're so
reform
right. And
doesn't.
yesterday when we were sorry, Drew, yesterday when we were talking, you had mentioned that you feel that there should be a class in high school taught on just basic law, just basics to where people just have enough to be able to know better. And I couldn't agree
Exactly.
with you more. Like, let's teach them something they can use. Not let's, stop with this critical race theory. Let's actually like teach skills, banking, a little bit of law so that they can be equipped to just live in the real world. And
Exactly.
I think that's so smart.
One of the most important things, especially here in New York, should be vehicle law.
Oh,
It's just
yeah.
like it's insane how many people just get their license and they start driving here in the city. This is one of the hardest cities to drive in.
Oh my
And for
gosh.
somebody who has never had a license and they're, all of a
Oh,
sudden, like, 30 years old and they just get a license, they're like, what do I do?
yeah.
I mean, they have schools, which are recommended before you get your driver's license, but not everybody
Where's your little
takes them
no,
here either.
a class? I know. All right. Well, I have a funny for you. When I first moved, when I moved to New York City, I lived in Battleground, Washington, out in the country. So I went from like a country bumpkin to New York City, and my in-laws lived on Long Island at the time. So I was coming into town to see an apartment, and I drove from Long Island to Queens, and I was like, oh my gosh, this great parking spot, because I was all nervous that I wasn't going to get a good parking spot. I park and I go meet my husband. We find an apartment, yada, yada. Turns out I parked in a bus zone and I got like a $350 ticket. My husband was so mad at me. But I was like, and they saw the Oregon plates. I'm sure they were like, she's getting a big one. It was kind of,
Yeah. And that, too, that's unfortunate. When I first moved here from the Philadelphia area, it was totally different with parking fines. Meter expirations example, I think it's like $215. I'm sorry, no, I
dang.
apologize. 115. I think their handicap is something greater, something around like $300 or $400. But if you make a mistake and your meter expires in, say, like Philadelphia City, it's like a $25 fine. It's a
Okay.
big difference.
Yeah, that is a big
In
difference.
the cost.
Oh my gosh.
They have
I don't
these
miss having
weird
to move the
regulations.
car every other day for the garbage trucks. I hated that. And I don't know if you have it, but I had one of those bumper guards that hangs out of your trunk. So you can pretty
The
much
bumper
bumper.
diapers.
Yeah, the bumper diaper. I totally, so that when you park, you bump, 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 bump your way into the spot. I'm like, that's what you do. It's like being on Mario Kart in New York City. I'm serious. I drove in New York City. It's like Mario Kart. You have to just
Yeah.
realize people are going to be all around you. You have obstacles coming at you, and you just got to do your best to stay on the road. Oh,
Yes.
it's
If you have a
crazy. It gave
car
me
that you don't want bumped, you definitely need one of those bumper guards. Because I mean,
a,
they're amazing to have because not everybody knows how to park, and
oh yeah.
that's the first thing you need to learn here. So
Yeah, no, I'm good now. I could park an F-350 in the crack of someone's butt. Like I've got it down. But if it
you
wasn't
got the
for New
skill.
York City, I mean, that threw me in. I remember once in Portland when I was going to go downtown to eat with my sister years ago. I had to, the only spot open was a parallel park, and I was like, oh God, this isn't going to go well. And there were people dining outside. It was the summer, and I slaughtered that parallel park so bad. I just drove off and we went somewhere else. People were
Yeah.
watching me and laughing at me. It was so embarrassing. But
Well, I mean,
yeah,
if
you have to.
you grow up a place that you have a driveway and you don't need to know how to parallel park, you know, why
Yeah,
do you need to learn it? Then all of a sudden it's like
seriously.
trying. It's
Oh my
different.
gosh. All right. So I have to know, Drew, do you have one of those little like grandma carts that you use when you go grocery shopping? The ones that you push down the street?
Oh! I know what you're talking about. No, no, I do. We had one because they're convenient for doing laundry. We have
Oh yeah.
a laundry. Where in our complex we actually have our own laundry facilities. So we got to walk down into the courtyard and go over to our building for the laundry room. But other than that, we use Fresh Direct. They're amazing.
Oh, that's so
Uh,
smart.
yeah, you can buy
That must
online,
already,
instantly figure out what you need. Yep.
yeah, no,
Fresh
that's
Direct is
smart.
amazing.
Oh my gosh. Here's the thing. Is someone popped up, I think it was Chris from, is it Ohio? He's like, I can't even imagine this. But I will tell you the things I hated the most about living in New York City. One, the grocery shopping, Arkansas. Oh, you don't have to even know how to parallel park to get a license in Arkansas. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Because yeah, I'm not great at that still. Thank God for the rear cams. That's like a lifesaver. But I hated grocery shopping, Drew. It was like all the grocery stores coming from like suburbia here, they hardly had anything. It was like they had a third of what I needed. And so I'd have to go to multiple just to get what I wanted. And then I would line my arms with the bags and carry them until I got smarter and ended up buying a granny cart. Um,
Yes,
horrible,
they're
horrible.
helpful. They're super
Oh my
helpful to
God.
have, definitely, because everything is
It's
walking here. You know,
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and it was just crazy experiences like that. And it was funny when we moved back here. I was like, can we let's just drive to the grocery store? Like something that I had totally taken for granted before, or doing my laundry in my house. I mean, seriously,
right?
like, ah, that was rough. My
Little
entire
things.
Sunday would be dedicated to laundry. I'm like, no. And then it's not like I like to fold my laundry when it's like fluffed and hot. No, you can't
Right.
do that because someone's already thrown it in a cart because God forbid you were 30 seconds late to getting it after the buzzer went off. So someone's touching your
Stay
underwear.
with your clothes. Yes, yes. It's just
I
I
know. And
don't.
there were
I stay.
people
I stay with them the whole time.
smart. I should have. But the thing is, the laundromat by my old apartment, it was like they played Spanish soap operas, and and it was before smartphones. And
Right.
so you're just sitting there like staring at the wall pretty much. And so I would leave, and then yeah, things would
Yeah. I
happen.
mean, it's convenient to have one just for your building. Because it's just privatized to just you. So I mean that
Right.
is a little easier.
That is nice. All right,
Some
Drew, we
things I'll
have
miss.
5 minutes left. I want to ask you to talk about where you're at today, because I know that you've thrown around moving to a red state, but then I know you also have a great. Um, Juan said there's nothing wrong with Spanish soap operas. There's nothing wrong. I just don't understand what the hell they're saying. Oh gosh, but I
Completely
want to
just
know.
froze. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Oh, we good now?
Okay. Yes.
All right, cool. But I want to know from you. I know that you and I talked about your business plan and what you're looking to do. And actually, my brother-in-law was talking about doing the same thing here in Portland because the bodyguard service or the bodyguard industry, oh my gosh, in a blue state, it's so needed. So, like I said, we have 4 minutes now. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're looking to do and then the tie back into helping women, like you talked about before, that need that escort? Not a
Yes,
male
definitely.
escort, but like
Not that kind
security.
of escort, but yes, definitely. Um, I want to bring a business that actually I started in Pennsylvania, and I did it kind of like on the side, but I want to bring it back here and start it up again here in New York. And basically, what I want to do is be able to offer assistance to people who don't have the thousands of dollars to pay for a bodyguard service and that need some type of protection. That unfortunately the police officers, our hands are tied when it comes to, like I was saying earlier, certain things. And there is one major problem that is experienced throughout every city with domestic issues, and that's involving somebody who comes and threatens you, and you have to go file a protective abuse order, but you get threatened, and some are afraid to do it, and they never file the papers, and nothing happens. So now if they have something where we can work out through the courts, even I don't care, even like a type of community service relations thing, I want my agency to be able to help out, helping women get to their court hearings and be able to go and feel safe to file, to get these jerks off of the street that are harassing and threatening them, and that's the best that we can do. Then we will. We're always going to do what we can, to try and help the community out as well any way we can, and that's one of the main things I want my organization to focus on, as well as just basic protective services, for people who actually need it, that can afford a better quality of retired, or now we're saying resigned, police officers who no longer want to work in that field because the private sector is actually more profitable for everybody. And unfortunately, it goes that way. But I actually like it better in some ways because we can do more. We're not restricted as much as a law enforcement officer is. So it seems like it's going to be a good adventure to look forward towards. And, we're slowly building it, but we should get there within the next year or so, and be able to start helping people again. So
I think that's awesome. I may have to put you in touch with my brother-in-law, who's like, he's thinking about doing it here. And because he was like immediately after the whole inauguration, the fake inauguration, whatever. Once that happened, I was just so upset. And he's like, here's the upside. I can make a lot of money with some type of like bodyguard service. And I was like, okay.
yes.
I totally see that though, because it is dangerous in blue cities like ours and ours. So I think that's a really good idea. And like you said, you have plenty of ex-law enforcement, ex-military that would be happy to do that for a living. So really cool.
And the transition will be easy too, because they're already trained. So, I mean, the best thing about it is, we have a group of guys that are already trained, certified, and they care about, people's lives, and helping them, is important to them most. So that's what we want. We can give work to the guys when they come home, and that's also very helpful too.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. Juan said we have a little bit longer. So I was going to touch on one thing here. Something that drives my husband absolutely crazy is when he arrives on a domestic violence call and he's taking the report, and then he asks usually it's a woman filing the report, and he says, "Are you going to show up for your court date?" And they're like, no, I don't want to press charges. It just drives him absolutely crazy, because he's like, and I think this probably he speaks for most law enforcement officers. They're like, why do you call us if you're not going to press charges? Why do you call us? I mean, all they're doing is putting the fire out for that moment in time, putting their life on the line, because domestics have the highest amount of police officer murders. And I mean, it's just insane. And then they're not going to press charges. And I know it's like a cycle of abuse, and I've never been there, and I never want to be, but so it's difficult for someone like me to understand. But I think what you're talking about doing by being able to support these women more, it's going to encourage more women to actually press charges and to get out of that situation. So I think that's really admirable, and so needed.
It is.
Absolutely.
And it like you're saying, it is a shame that, they really call the police, and we come, and we're kind of just like to kind of scare them away for the meantime, and that's not what we're supposed to be used for, and we're not helping them if, like you said, they're not going forward with their end, and they need to be able to follow through and to do it properly. Sometimes at that point they're threatened, that if you do follow through, that they will be killed. And unfortunately, there's been situations that occurred.
Right,
So
exactly. Yeah, it's scary. It is. It's like I've never been in it, so I can't 100%. It's kind of like when my sister is in recovery. You saw the episode. She's was an addict for so
right,
long, and it just because I don't have that personality, it's really hard for me to put myself there and understand. And I work at it every day to better understand her.
exactly.
But so it's the same thing with an abusive pattern. It's like why would you put up with that? But it's this the psychological impacts that it keeps them with what they know. They stick with what they
It
know.
does. And if you
Yeah,
stick with what you know, sometimes that's your comfort zone. But moving out of
right,
your comfort zone, knowing that, okay, well, he pays the rent and this is, her way of living, it changes a lot of factors. People are like, you know what, I just wanted to scare him. Like I had, real quick, I had a lady one time in the grocery store, and I walked in there in uniform on my lunch break, and she comes up, and her child is, being a 5-year old. And she says to him, she says, you know what? She said, if you don't stop, I want to have that officer lock you up. She's like, you better stop, or he's going to lock you up. And, I kind of smiled and waved and, kind of did what I could to kind of lighten the child's, memory of what a police officer should be. And afterwards, I kind of just whispered to her, I said, it's really not a good idea to use that as us as a threat. I said, we don't want children to be afraid of us. I mean, I understand what you were getting at, and,
right,
want some type of, you know, figure of authority to, bring to his attention. But to
right,
use this as a threat kind of stays in their mind, and
right,
as they grow up, we don't want them to say, oh, they're the bad guys, you know, and
right,
I know
exactly.
it's a shame that that's the way that, a lot of police officers looked at in certain community
No,
as the person you call when there's a problem that you need to use them as a threat,
exactly.
you know.
That same thing happened, Drew. One of our friends, they my buddy, my husband's friend, he called my husband was like, "Hey, can you come over? He said my son's acting up and I just want you to scare him." And my husband was like, he schooled him. He's like, "No, you don't do that." He's like, "That's going to drive a wedge and potentially put him on the wrong path." And so people and my friend, our friend meant well, but they just don't get it. You just don't do that. Like they're supposed to be it should be an alliance between law enforcement and the community, not a division. And
Right.
that's what that mentality creates for sure. So,
I
and that's
mean,
just
it
scary.
is.
Well, but
I mean, if we had that type of, mindset, even when somebody is pulled over by a police officer, I mean, I've been pulled over more than once.
oh,
Not for doing anything crazy, but something simple as like, I didn't use my turn signal
yeah,
or I was traveling, but for whatever it was worth, you get the same level of respect. And I never say I'm a police officer or was former anything. Never tried to use that because we get in a lot of trouble if we get pulled over, because we're supposed to know better. But it
yeah,
was an infraction that I didn't know my tail light was out or something. But
yeah,
if you give the same level of respect that you would to your parents, okay, is the
right,
best way to do this. If your mother comes up to you or your father comes to you and says, "Listen, I need to talk to you," you're going to be quiet for a minute and listen, and you're not going to interrupt because they're your parents, and
right,
you're giving them respect, and that needs to be understood. And when everybody tries to sit there and argue, "Oh no, you're wrong, you shouldn't do this with me, I know my rights." Okay, well, know your rights and remain silent. Okay, listen to what I have to say. Okay, I'm not going to waste my time pulling you over because it's not valuable for me to do that. There's better
right,
things that I could be doing, I'm sure, and I'm pulling you over for a reason. So just hear me out. And
right,
if you want to argue it at court. You know, this isn't the
exactly.
place. You know,
Yeah. Well,
and
that just
most of the
tells me
time we're going to let you go. We're not going to. Cause a problem with you. We're really just giving you an advisement. You may get a citation or not, and that'll be it. Instead of
right.
getting locked up and possibly worse.
It's just
So,
wild. I don't understand. I've been pulled over multiple times because I speed. I do have a lead foot, but and I'm not,
That's
you're better than I am because I did pull the husband's a police officer card once. But, and did I get out of that ticket? I think I did. But anyways,
we
I'm not the girl that cries and does all that. I'm like, I think about it when I get pulled over for a driving infraction. I'm like, man, come on. There's like murderers and rapists and robbers driving around. Like, go after them. But I'm never disrespectful. I'm more just kind of like jokey and
right,
it's just wild. Like you're saying, what you're saying earlier would make sense for common sense folks, but unfortunately, a lot of kids don't respect their parents, and they don't get talked to when they disrespect their parents, and so and the disrespect continues, and a lot of it's just learned. The disrespect towards police is cultivated in the home, so
right.
that's just it's
I mean, hopefully
unfortunate.
that ends at childhood, and when you become an adult, maybe,
Yeah,
my hope is that you learn some point what respect means.
yeah,
And again, we're not demanding it. I'm earning it from you because I'm speaking to you casually, just like, I'm speaking now. And, we learned this a long time ago. We go to a domestic and two people are fighting and they're screaming, and that's all that happens. We walk in the door.
right,
And
right,
I
exactly.
walk up to the, you separate, if there's two parties, I bring the one party outside, usually the victim, and I speak to her and say, listen, and she's screaming. And I talk to her the way I'm talking to you, but lower my voice, it forces her to hear. Okay. And then when it forces her to hear, she automatically starts speaking quieter. And,
Nice.
you know, it's a psychological thing, but it works. And
Get it. Yeah.
I've done it. I do that with my kids. I mean, they're not kids anymore. 23 and 18 years old now, but I've always done it that way, and it works. It's a communication thing, and communication is important.
Absolutely.
Visual. So
Well, I've loved talking to you and hearing your stories from the street, and then just talking about Manhattan because man, when you haven't lived there, I'll tell you what. When every morning when I came out of the subway, my building was 355th Avenue, so but I would come right up on Fifth Avenue, and I would get chills because you're walking down the street. Not only is New York just so rich in history, but you're walking down the street with CEOs and people that are a big deal. And but the cool thing with New York is it's unlike California. People aren't like, oh my God, there's so and so. Can I get an autograph? It's like no one cares who you are for the most part in New York City. You just get from point A to point B. So it's a really special place, but unfortunately, like we both agreed yesterday, it's dying, and we don't know what the future holds. It doesn't look bright right now, that's for sure. But
yeah,
well, so I appreciate you so much. Let's do this since we have just a little bit of time. I'm curious if anybody has questions for Drew or myself. If not, that is okay. I saw a lot of comments popping up during. Hello. You have a question for us? But and I felt bad I wasn't able to address the comments that were popping up, but we can now if anyone has anything. You talk about going out of your comfort zone a bit, Drew, and I was reached out to by this guy in Canada who has a Canadian podcast with a lot of viewers, and he is on the opposing side of the mask debate. Then I'm an anti-masker, and he is strongly for it and completely backs what their government is doing. And he asked me to be a guest to have a respectful conversation. The thing is, it's out of my comfort zone, and I don't know if I'm going to do it. It makes me slightly uncomfortable. But as you said, we have to get out of our comfort zones a bit to make an impact. So, what do you think? Yay or nay?
definitely. I mean, coming out of your comfort zone is always important because it gives you the opportunity to look outside the box, and that's where
Right.
we, are able to see how life, works on the outside, and
Right.
it gives you a different perspective. As far as like the masks are concerned, I mean, they obviously work to a degree, depending on what
Right.
you're using them for. There's
Right.
masks. Surgeons use them in surgery, but afterwards they take them off. They don't wear them all day. It's not the same one.
Right.
And that more or less
Exactly.
protects them from breathing into the open wounds and all that fun stuff.
Right.
But masks outside, they're just not needed. I mean, if you're standing in a crowd of people and you're worried about somebody that's coughing, by all means, put on whatever you need to.
Yeah.
But we can't be hyper expose ourselves or actually underexpose ourselves to bacteria, because we're going around right now,
Right.
we're cleaning ourselves with everything. We're using antibacterial soap, hand sanitizer, all this stuff. By the time our body actually experiences a germ, it's not going to know what to do. Your immune
Right.
system,
So
the way
true.
it works is, it needs to know what the virus is, in order to fight it. And that was the whole idea behind immunization, is to give it a little bit of an experience and say, hey, this is what it looks like, and let your little police officers inside the body fight it, when it comes in. That's how to recognize it. So if we are constantly, sterilized, we're not going to be able to protect ourselves when we're exposed to something as
Right.
simple as the common cold.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Well,
a
just,
scary thought.
ago, as you know, I wasn't on the show 2 weeks ago. I had somebody fill in for me because I got a nasty cold, and I usually do not get that sick at all. My entire family, we were all just wiped out, and it was just a cold. But it's the fact that my immune system turned into a little wimp, and so did the rest of us from lack of exposure. But the one person who had it the least was my husband, and that's because he's been around people. He doesn't work from home like I do. So he's the one who had the least symptoms, but that's because, it's because his immune system's been working this whole time, where the rest of us, we've just been isolated for the most part, not by our own doing,
Yeah.
but just by the way society is right now. So
I don't get the flu shot. I don't have any type of flu vaccinations for years,
yeah,
and I don't get. Thank God I don't get sick. But I'm out there. I expose myself. You know how many people perished unfortunately from this virus here in New York City alone. We were again ground zero for the most part, and I go outside. I don't wear a mask. I've never had the virus. I've never been exposed to it. I've had every brain tickling, type of test that they can do, and they
no.
bodies. So, I mean,
Oh,
I'm healthy. I remain healthy, thank God. But I think part of it is because I don't conceal myself 24/7.
right.
Like people are walking down the street, riding bikes, jogging, wearing masks, driving cars by themselves, wearing a
Yeah.
mask. A lot of it comes from
It's
fear, and I
beyond.
get that because it's the
Right.
unknown. But in reality, your body needs to breathe fresh air because that's the most healthiest thing for you. Not There's
Right.
not that
Exactly.
much fresh air in New York, but what's there you should
Yeah.
be breathing.
All right,
And
Drew, I have to know. So are you saying yes, I should do that podcast?
I would, because it definitely gives both sides, and that's what it's about.
You might brutalize
It's
me. We'll see. Canadian, some weird Canadian facts. So I don't know about their government and all that stuff, but we'll
I
see.
mean,
All right, I'll do
their
it.
lockdown, from what I heard, is very
Of course.
very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, I
they're
heard
definitely.
he's for it. So yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't know. We'll see.
it's almost communist what they're doing
Oh
to
yeah,
them,
bad.
to its own level. And if we were to have something similar, like if they called martial law, for example, everybody would be
Yeah,
walking around with a passport for everything, paperwork, and if you didn't have it, you know, be like
yeah,
visiting Russia. You know,
yeah.
you get locked up for not having.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. We weren't able to have Robert on. We had some technical difficulties, and I relate to almost everything y'all talk about. Aw, awesome. Thank you, Steve. That's so good. I wonder what the exception is, the almost. Maybe it's the New York City part. But
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe.
awesome, awesome chatting with you. I really appreciate it. This is what it's all about. Thank you for being a great patriot, and thank you for your years in law enforcement, because I know it's beyond what most can even imagine on a day-to-day basis with the risk everyone's under. So Anyways, I appreciate you so much, and I look forward to talking again. And thank you again for helping me with my baby Scarlett.
It's my pleasure. And thank you for everything your husband's doing as well, and continuing moving
Absolutely.
forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
have a great night.
Same to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. That was really fun. And you know what? He was only prepped to go for 30 minutes because we did have 2 guests planned for today. One has a phone that's encrypted. He's fancy. And so we weren't able to get him through. We'll have to do that another time. But I appreciate Drew so much. He was able to go an hour with me, and that's fantastic. And thank you for tuning in. And don't forget that RAM TV, that we are partnered with My Pillow, and we have our own code, and that is RAM, as easy as that. And so you can do it. You can call your order in. If people still do that, go for it. But you can also go on the website, and then the discount code is RAM. And that really helps us with our legitimacy as a news source. And so we would drastically appreciate you to do that when you go to make your purchases. And like I always say, they may be woke, but we're awake. Have a great night.